Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about my Leaguestarter for patch 0.5, which was Grim Pillar's Spell Totem Oracle. Now, this has been by far the strongest Leaguestarter I've ever played. It revolves around Grim Pillars, which is one of the new ward skills, which you can put into a totem, and it doesn't cost the totem ward because the totem doesn't consume mana, life, or ward. Grim Pillars does decent upfront damage, but it also spawns these ice crystals, which you can explode with stuff like Tangle and Biting Frost, because you can consume its freeze to explode the crystals. This results in completely absurd damage, and frankly, it was an absolute breeze. Totems also got quite a bit of a rework. First, the Ancestral Bond Keystone now makes it so you do not consume charges anymore, so no more power charges or endurance charges needed, no annoyances. You can just spam them and replace them if they die or reposition them. It is great. It's super good. And as well as that, you can now place them while moving. And if you've ever played, let's say, a ranged build that can attack while moving, like a spear build or a bow build versus a melee build, you know the difference. In this video, I'll cover everything from level 1 all the way to hundreds of divines of investment. So let's get started. Before we start though, resources. There's obviously the video guide that you're watching right now. There's also a full max roll guide. This got a little bit of an overhaul with the notes and everything. It can be a lot more detailed now. So if you are into written guides, would highly recommend this one. You can see right here, there are 4 different sections. Plants leveling, Totem Respec. I talk a little bit about how you get the Grim Pillars and whatnot. Then you get into Endgame, which is the normal version of an Endgame plus with aspirational stuff as well, all the way up to Mageblood. And if you're more of a PoB guy, there's also loadouts here, all the way up to aspirational. Now do note that if I update anything, it will probably not be updated in PoB simply because the link changes every single time and I have it linked to like 10 different places. So I would have to replace it every single time I do a small change. So just know that going in, but if you're a PoB guy, go for it. And lastly, I have a build doc here. If you are interested how my builds looked, I have video updates from day 1 to day 5 right here. And I also have my snapshots from every day. But do note that there are mistakes in here because these are literally just my snapshots while I learn the build. Now, to show you how the build looks like, you have your totems right here where Grim Pillars is in. And I'll quickly show you how the skill looks. So you put down these ice pillars, but they are still in your way, right? So they do a lot of damage on explosion, and you can pop them with Entangle. So for example, if I pop down Entangle right here, you can see all the ice pillars in its way get destroyed, and the plants will actually come out and hit it over and over again. So what here happens here is you have an Entangle, which you plop down, and it kills the ice crystals over and over because we have Biting Frost support. What Biting Frost support says is it consumes freeze. Now, if we look at Grim Pillars right here, which we'll go over in detail in a second, you can see hover over ice crystal. Skills which consume freeze will instantly shatter ice crystals, which means that you don't have to do anything weird with ice crystal life reduced, increased. You do not have to care about it. In fact, you will see that my Entangle is a level 1. You don't have to think about it at all. It costs very little mana, and it will automatically pop everything you need. Now, let's talk about some basics about totems. Totems are not minions and do not scale with minion modifiers. Even though they kind of look like it, right? They have their own life bar. They are considered you. There are some examples where that isn't the case, but that's all you have to know. For all intents and purposes, a 15% totem damage would be the same as, I don't know, 15% increased elemental damage. The reason it's good, though, is because it's specialized, so the values are usually higher than just generic damage. They also scale with all your cast speed. So for example, on the ring right here, I have 24% cast speed. That counts towards you just as much. There are, however, specialized totem nodes, for example, stuff like placement speed. And placement speed is very, very important. If you see right here, my character will have an animation when I place down the totem. This has nothing to do with cast speed. I have an animation, and it's very quick. Very quick. And then there's another animation, which is how long it takes the totem to plop up from the ground. Both of these get scaled by placement speed. And placement speed is all over the place. You will see me take it over and over, even the small node, which I technically do not have to take, and all the way down here. I have around 300% right now, which then means that we have a certain stat priority, plus to spell cold skill levels, increased spell damage, elemental damage. For example, if you look at this wand, the +5 here almost doubles my damage. That's how crazy levels are in this game. And if I didn't have it, I would be making a huge mistake. Then we have cast speed, which is very important, not just for damage, or DPS, I should say, also for how comfy the build feels, right? Your entangles go off faster. Your totems start casting faster. So it has a quality of life component to it, so do not underestimate it. Critical hit chance, critical hit damage is later once you transition to crit, which we'll also talk about. And totem placement speed, like I said, is the biggest feels good stat. Now, back to the totem basics. Spell totem is a meta gem. So what that means is you have to first put it here where normally skills are, and then slot your skill into this. This has a few advantages. So you obviously lose a support gem, because if Grim Pillars was here, you could put another support gem. But it means, you can see my Grim Pillars is not even linked. I can keep getting a level 20 Grim Pillars and corrupt it for +1 over and over, and I don't have to link it before. Very, very nice. So you can also try out different spells, and you don't have to relink every single time. It has its advantages as well. I will say that right now, this is bugged. This is just a tooltip era. You do not get 25% less cast speed, so don't be afraid to quality your spell totem. And then we have stuff like urgent totems, which once again, placement speed, efficiency support for less cost. This one's a little bit negotiable and depends. And then we have some high-end lineage gems, which we'll also go over. Once placed down, the totem will constantly use the support gem. You already saw this when I tested it a second ago. Totem level is only relevant for defense. So the way it works is totem levels dictate how tanky the totem gets. So you can see right here, totems gain percentage resistances and totems gain chaos resistances. This would go up with level. However, we're an oracle, so we don't need that. We have unnamed hardwood. Totems die 6 seconds after life is reduced to 0. So the idea is you want to reduce the gem level down to as low as possible, which is exactly 14, in order to pay less mana, because this is how your mana cost is dictated of putting the totems down. But then your Grim Pillars, you want to have as high level as possible. However, War Gems are weird. You cannot level them up with normal uncut skill gems. You need Thaumaturgic Flux. Do note that you cannot undo this, so make sure you have the level to upgrade your skill. For example, level 18 would be 78, 1984, and 20 level 90. Then let's talk about our totem maximum though. You will have noted that I can place down 6 totems and my spirit will be completely consumed. I have almost 400 at this point. The reason is Ancestral Bond Keystone. Your totem limit is doubled, no charge requirements for placing totems, which is huge. And then totems reserve 75 spirit each. Now it's actually not 75, it is 63 because I'm using efficient inscriptions, which reduces it. And this is exactly how it works. Per default, you only have 1 spell totem that can be placed. At gem level 14, it goes to 2. So if you, for example, look right here, spell totem +4, I get exactly to level 14. That is where the limit goes from 1 totem to 2 totems. You do not need more because you do have unnamed hardwood later, which gives you also a +1. And these all get doubled with the Ancestral Bond Keystone for maximum of up to 6. Now, we still need the spirit to actually put down the totems though, and we do that by first getting our campaign quest sorted for 100 spirit. Then you can get realistically 150 to 210 spirit. You can get more if you're going absolute haywire. This is your biggest source of spirit, and we're going to go over it in a second. Up to 65 from a solar amulet, so you could also have up to 15 in the implicit instead of the all attributes if you had a really good one, but this is already a very expensive amulet, so there it goes. You can get up to 61 from body armor prefix. I only have 53. And then you can also get efficient inscriptions, the anoint that I talked about, which is also a little bit expensive. The TLDR here is that depending on your gear level, you will be able to put down at the start 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Now, the most important thing to get your spirit is your scepter offhand, and there's more to it than meets the eye. So first, you want to get as much spirit as possible. That's about it. There's some cute stats like light radius, mana regen, cool and all, but the most important thing is actually in the implicit, because a scepter comes with a aura per default, grants skill so-and-so. So in our case, for example, we have a purity of fire, and these are not made equal. So there's purity of fire, purity of lightning, and purity of ice, and they all give you sorts of resistances, which is cute, right? But there's other offensive options, so why am I not going for that? The reason is because for some reason, scepters with purity auras, you can put in as many spirit supports as you want without actually paying their spirit cost. So you can see right here, I'm on full spirit and I have all of these activated. And there's some absolutely crazy ones. So you get 40% increased spell damage, you get mana regen, this one's whatever, and then you have other expensive options or cheap options like vitality when you life early. That is the most important part. Get yourself one of the purities. And if you don't know, you can actually apply these jewelers. I can't anymore because I already 6-linked it, but you can actually 6-link your scepter now. It does not have to be a level 20 anymore. Now, what else do you have to press though? Because you have your spell totems, you have your entangle, we already talked about it. So as for support gems, first up, you have the Grim Pillars in here with urgent totems, efficiency, Vorana Siege. This can be replaced with magnified area. You'll see that in all the planners. And then Rakiata's Flow will be replaced with Cold Mastery. Rakiata's Flow changes the game quite a bit. I'll talk about that when we get to Endgame. Entangle will have Biting Frost or the upgraded version more against Inside, although it's basically no difference. Branching Fissures 1, just to give you a little bit more coverage right here. With Magnified Area, Rapid Casting, and Living Lightning. These are really nice to pop some extra ice crystals while you're walking around. Then you have Mana Tempest. So Mana Tempest gives it snapshots. So basically, you do not need to think about when you cast it at all. Whenever it's up, all your totems gain the extra damage on every hit. The way it works is you have this cloud, and while you stand in it, you get a lot of extra damage. And that's actually lightning damage. So you also get a great shock. But it has Linger. So the way it works is if you hover over here, you can see effects of Mana Tempest linger for 4 seconds after leaving the Tempest. And the Tempest drains your mana. So what you want to do is you want to have Advancing Storm so it moves away from you after you cast it. And it's basically up for 4 seconds, rinse and repeat. Efficiency, Lightning Mastery. So I right click it right here. It goes outwards and you can see the buff is still up for 4 seconds. And then it goes back on cooldown at some point. And you can click it again, right? And if you're casting stuff, it will drain your mana quite a bit. So you'll have to time it, but yeah. And then we have Frost Bomb and Elemental Weakness. These will be in your build for quite a while, not so much later on, but I'll show you how they look like. So Frost Bomb is basically just you put it down and you don't have to wait for the explosion. These ticks here are already what you're looking for. So the explosion is completely irrelevant. You're not using these cold infusions, but every pulse applies exposure and exposure effect, and that gives a lot of minus resistances to enemies. As well as that, we have Elemental Weakness with Cursed Ground, so you don't have to like exactly time it. You plop it down before the boss even comes up. It's huge, and while he stands on here, he gets cursed. Now for Ascendancy, we're Oracle. Oracle has a few nifty things right here. First, it has Walk the Paths Not Taken, which gives you secret passive points. For example, these movement speed nodes right here would not be accessible without taking that node. The totem nodes up here, some of the progression nodes here with increased damage. It's also very, very good for leveling. Just an overall super solid node. Secondary, you have Lesser Harm, which is a decent defensive node, but it's mostly for forced outcome. Now, this one gives you Inevitable Crit, gives you TLDR, a lot of crit. If you have between 30 and 40% crit, you don't need to think about too much. You can't really get too much crit on this build. But yeah, it gives you a guaranteed crit at the cost of some of your crit damage. And then lastly, we take Unnamed Hardwood, which makes it so our totems can't really die. They're up for 6 seconds, even if they die, which means we can have a low-level spell totem and pay a lot less mana, and it doesn't matter, because usually the levels of Spell Totem dictate how much life it has. Now let's talk about progression. First, you're going to be leveling as plants. Spell Totem is level 22. Grim Pillar starts appearing at level 22, so you're going to get it around level 30-ish to 40-ish, so you need to have a plan before. Well, we do have one of the best leveling starters, which is the plants setup. If you've never seen this before, early on, you're going to need some help from elemental spells. So you're going to cast stuff like Volcano, which you get right from the get-go. You just have to charge it up and then release it. And you also have Frostbomb to debuff enemies. It also deals quite a bit of damage early on, even without any supported links. And then you're going to cast an Entangle here or there, but at that point, it's not going to do that much damage. At level 6, you get Bone Cage, which with Spell Cascade is quite a strong skill. So you can put it into your rotation. So the only problem about it is kind of melee. It does a lot of damage on single target early on if you position correctly, but you have to pick your pockets where the boss is not going to melee you. There's obviously some knowledge attached to it, but it also pins enemies, so it's quite nice for clear. So you can use that one for a while. Now, the biggest breakpoint here is at level 14 when you get Bone Storm. Once you get Bone Storm, everything changes. You don't need any help anymore from Frostbomb. You don't need any help from Volcano anymore. Your single target is sorted. If you've never seen this before, it is glorious. This is Bone Storm. You charge it up to 20, you release it, and it does a lot of damage. Make sure that you're as close as possible to the enemy, because if you're too far away, some of these projectiles are not going to hit. But yeah, now another thing you have to know about Bone Storm is it applies Impale. These are basically saved up damage dealers on the enemy, but they have to be consumed somehow. And how do we consume them? With Thunderstorm. Now, Thunderstorm has a way to do that with Living Lightning. Thunderstorm, you can press, and there's going to be these like minions that appear on top of enemies, and they will then consume the Impale, giving you a crazy amount of single target damage. And the reason this is so good is because, well, at some point, we're going to get accelerated growth. So if we talk about Entangle, which at the start is kind of mid, later on, once you get in accelerated growth, it's kind of good, because you will start popping, and this is how it looks like. So you will press the Thunderstorm, and you will water the plants, and then these purple explosions come out. Accelerated growth, you get around about level 18. So those are kind of the steps in your progression. At level 14, you get Bone Storm, you're going to get really strong. At level 18, you get the accelerated growth. So then your single target and your clear is a lot better. And the last piece of the puzzle is the Thrashing Vines, which is also pressed for a single target. So these, you just press once and then they just appear next to enemies, and you also want to water them. So you can see how Thunderstorm kind of holds everything together. It makes your Bone Storm better. It makes your plants better. It's just absolutely OP. Make sure you have Living Lightning on it. As for your early passive tree, it's very straightforward. You want to take every increased damage node you can possibly get anywhere. If you take anything but increased damage, Lightning will come down and rain upon you, because this game is balanced around you clicking all the increased damage nodes. It is what it is. Now, Act 2 is really going to surprise you, because you're going to take a little bit more increased damage of all sorts of kinds. And another thing that you're going to get is your first Ascendancy, which is Unseen Path. And you get the paths not taken. So there's certain nodes on the passive tree that are kind of weird, and they only appear on Oracle. So for example, this totem cluster, you usually don't see unless you're Oracle. And there's also this increased damage right here, which is extremely, extremely strong. So get your first Ascendancy ASAP. The most important stats while leveling is to get a +1 on both your wand and your focus. If you can get a +2 on your wand, even better. You can even go for a staff with +2. You don't necessarily need a focus. We need a scepter later, so it doesn't really matter. Otherwise, if you can get any form of cast speed on your rings, that's going to be huge. If you can get a +1 on amulet, that's huge. Otherwise, obviously, the move speed. Now, you might be wondering, when can you actually respec to totems? And this one is really, really rough to answer, because it's going to depend on how lucky you get, or how unlucky you get, for that matter. All you need to start, and I mean all, is the Grim Pillars gem. However, you cannot level it down. So all the people who already leveled with it can't just resell it to people leveling again. So most people will just find it organically through the league mechanic. So you'll find them right here, and at some point you're going to find one where you click on it and it says Grim Pillars, and then you take Grim Pillars and you won the game. Now, should you be lucky enough to drop a Divine Orb early on, in Act 4, once you get to King's March, go here, Currency Exchange, and get yourselves some Exalts for Divines. So this is going to depend whatever this number is whenever you are, but here's what you need. Grim Pillars does exist as a trade, obviously. You can just buy it. The price depends on the level requirement of the gem, so the level of the gem. So for example, level 8's right here, but you can see that the higher you go up, the cheaper they become. And that is because people want to level with it ASAP. So if you can pull through longer with plants, for example, until level 52, now you're only paying 5 instead of 50 exalts. So I would still go into it as soon as possible, because the speed boost it will give you will be worth it, but you have to kind of check that. So all you need is here, item level requirement. You can adjust this to your need. Now, what else do you need? A decent scepter with as much spirit as you possibly can get. As well as that, on the passive tree down here, you will see that I'm starting to take totem nodes. At this point, I'm not doing a weapon set passive, because it would change too frequently and you don't really need it. But you need Ancestral Bond, otherwise they're going to cost charges to use, which you don't want. And you want to get your early placement speed right here. There's a total of 70%. And then you also want the support. But later on, we'll go down here, as you can see right here. This is with 67 points in. And we also have Ancestral Conduits. Now, this is where it starts to be a little bit more fluid, depending on what your gear is. The totem breakpoints are 75 and 150. You're always going to have at least 2 totems. It's impossible not to. After that, you can get to 225. However, make sure that you have your spell totem on level 14. That does not have to be an uncut gem level 14. You don't have to be high level. You can also get +2 spell levels from your wand or also your amulet. Which is why, for example, in this planner, I don't have +2 cold spells. I have +2 all spells. So even though +3 to cold spells would be more damage, for your breakpoints, it's probably better to get this early. Most important thing now, you're going to have a high level Entangle, which costs a lot of mana. But now we don't need it for damage anymore. You only need it to proc the ice crystals, as we talked about. So make a new one at level 1. And if you have to re-quality it or whatever, the quality is very, very strong with the chance to create an additional fissure. That's probably the first thing you want to quality, or maybe the second thing after Grim Pillars. But then you have Spell Totems, Grim Pillars, Urgent Totems, Efficiency, and if you have a 5th link, then Magnified Area. Biggest thing though, don't sleep on all your other abilities. Elemental Weakness, Frost Bomb, and keep leveling them up all the way to level 18. That is where the breakpoint is at for these skills. Mana Tempest as well, it gives you extra lightning damage, which will also shock on top. And follow the support gems. With this setup, the campaign should be an absolute breeze for you. And if it is not, then go back and read if you maybe missed something. Because, yeah, this has been, like I said, the absolute craziest campaign I've ever had. So, okay, you're out of campaign. Now your enemies are going to get a lot stronger. You soon have to face some of the first bosses. So you need to gear up. We don't really have a theme when it comes to body armor. We're not energy shield. We're not armor. We're not evasion. We're just going to stack life. We're going to stack mana to make the mana situation a little bit easier. And then we're going to get all the resistances wherever possible. Also try to get spirit on body armor. Try to get spirit on your amulet. If you can get like a +2 and some spirit, that is perfect. But other than that, be concerned to cap your resistances, even chaos, and use your runes accordingly. Now, we'll have crafting resources down below for the wand, but this is your most important damage dealer. Otherwise, you can also search for it on trade. They are at this point extremely, extremely cheap. So I would personally, for a shittier wand like this, a progression wand, I would probably just buy it. And also don't be afraid to buy this on a non-optimal wand because they are currently quite cheap. They're getting absolutely printed from the League mechanic. So get your +1 in your rune on the wand as well. Keep upgrading your scepter. Unfortunately, this is bugged currently, but yeah, at this point you should have around 170 spirit or so. Upgrade your movement speed, super important to be able to reposition and just be faster, farm more currency faster. Now you can see I have an efficient casting instill here, and that one's quite important. That is this one right here. It has very cheap emotions that it uses. It's around 5 to 10 exalts, and it gives you a ton of cost efficiency and mana regen, which is quite nice. And if you don't know, this league, the way you instill amulets is actually down here when in the Delirium quest line, which is the Withered Willow. So you have to get right here. It's in front of the fortress. This is the entry of the fortress right here. You have to get there and then kill 5 bosses in the Delirium Fog, and then you get access to this distill. Now, after campaign, you want to get to crit as soon as possible. The way you do that is you have to do your 3rd Ascendancy. So if you open it right here, you can see that at this point, I have 3 Ascendancy points. I have the Unseen Path, which we talked about. This second node we haven't talked about because it's not that important. It's a very underwhelming node. You don't even have to do the second lab for a while if you don't want to. But then we get to inevitable crits. The way this works is it re-rolls your crit over and over and over unless you actually get a crit. So you're guaranteed to crit, but the extra damage from the crit will get reduced and reduced and reduced the longer it takes it. So your sweet spot for crit will be around 30 to 40% in total. That's all you need to know, but you need this node in order to go crit. Now, once you have this 3rd Ascendancy, you want to go for crit hit chance on your wand. Super important. Also, at this point, make sure that you have even more cast speed, maybe even pearl rings on your rings, and make sure you get jewels. So for example, the example jewel I give here is crit damage bonus for spells. Quite strong. If you can get a 3rd mod on it, even better. Quickie gearing tip right here. Getting chaos resistance early on can be quite hard, but there's a new item called Void Flux, which you can use on, for example, your jewelry or anything for that matter. And what it does is it takes all other resistances and transforms them into chaos res. You don't get them 1-to-1 though. You only get the same tier that chaos res would be, which is a little bit lower, but this is how it would look like. Now, implicits do not get changed, so the cold res on top will stay, but the other two will both get combined into a new chaos resistance roll. This is the way I cap myself early very easily. On the passive tree, you want to start getting stuff like Calculated Hunter or Vulgar Methods, Barbaric Strength, and then later on this node right here, and later on Controlled Magic. So now the crit floodgates are open. Now, next up, let's talk about weapon set passives. I want to make this clear. I know that it's confusing for some people. You only need to learn it once, and then you're going to understand it, and it's going to make all your builds in the future better. You cannot skip this. Trust me. You simply cannot. So I will explain it in detail the easiest possible way. So you will see these green and red passives in all these planners and on the passive trees. What the hell do they mean? Red is weapon set 1 and green is weapon set 2. So you can see right here, you have a 1 and you have a 2. And these are different configurations you can make for your build, and you should. Now, after campaign, you will have 24 weapon set passive points. So what that means is if you have 24 points available, instead of just speccing them generally, you can specialize. So for example, I can click right here and put in 1 totem node, and that's for my totems. And then for all the other skills, I can click here and can, for example, say, for my utility, I would like a little bit extra cast speed. And you can see 1 point was subtracted here. And now when I'm on the 1 set and I place my totems, I get the totem related stuff. And if I'm on my other set, I get the cast speed. Let's be more pragmatic though. What do you need on this build? Set up your weapon set passives. The first thing is you need to lock both your weapons in both slots because we don't want anything to change. In fact, if you don't do this, then your spirit will fluctuate and might unsummon your totems. So you can see right here that if I'm on weapon set 1, you can see both my weapons. And then there's this shadow in the background. Now I'll just right click here. So this is how it will look like for you, right? All you need to do, right click on the 1 and you will see that there is a shadow in the background. If you have to do that here as well, do it as well. That is how you know it works. Second, put your spell totem on 1 only. So it says down here, used with weapon set 1. You will have this. It will be used on both weapon sets. Untick the 2 and make sure only the 1 is ticked. And then on every other skill, you do exactly the opposite. So it will look like this, untick the 1. That way, whenever your weapon set 2, all your other skills are going to get used. And whenever your weapon set 1, your passives for weapon set 1 and your totem is going to be used. Number 3, and this is going to look different depending on where you are in your progression. You can check that out on the planners, but you have 24 points. Let's go. I click here and I start allocating all my totem points here. Boom. You can see they're all red. This is only on weapon set 1, and you will see that my weapon set 2 is still there. So I'll allocate them all, and I think I have these left, right? Yeah. 2, and then my last 2 are here. Okay, I just used up 24 weapon set passives. These will now only be applied to my totems. Meanwhile, whenever I press any of my other skills, I will get a ton of cast speed to make them a lot nicer. I will get Arcane Surge, and this buff remains permanently, even while I'm doing damage with my totems. It's quite nice. So I take all the cast speed right here. I'll get some AoE. Thank you very much. I'll also get the extra chance to get an additional Fissure and also fill out the rest of the Arcane Surge effect right here. So now you can see 24, 24. And yeah, now all that's going to happen with your passive tree is whenever you press left side, the spell totem, you will see that the red passives are pronounced. And whenever you do anything else, you will see that it swaps to the green passives. GG, you just made your build a million times better. Now, when should you do this? You can start with it throughout campaign with like 10, 12 weapon set passive points if you're very meticulous about your build. I put it in after campaign because I know how annoying it is having to juggle it around, and your passive tree is going to change constantly. That's up to you. Now, as for charms, at this point, you should have some decent ones. A Silver Charm against slows, Storm Charm against stuns, and you can also go for a Nascent Hope right here. These are very cheap immunity to freeze. Now, let's go over endgame. I decided to go for an energy shield version, and I'll tell you why. I had this trash wand, and I cleared every pinnacle. I felt like I'm on top of the world. I have a lot of damage, but at some point, you start getting one shot. Even though your playstyle is very defensive, at some point, it will happen, and then you're going to get annoyed. So guess what's better than 2k life, 8,000 energy shield right here. It's a lot nicer. You can tank explosions even. You're also immune to chaos, you're immune to bleeding. Now, to be clear, only do this if you are at the stage of gearing where you feel like you do too much damage or more than enough damage, but you're too squishy. So what that means is we will now have to spec certain nodes on the passive tree that were damaged into stuff like energy shield, and you will lose around 30% of your damage. So yes, you will lose some damage, but the build is going to feel a lot better. Now, most important thing for gearing, your life and chaos res is now irrelevant, because we're going to take Chaos Inoculation. This sets your life to 1, but as a payoff, you're getting immune to chaos damage, and you're immune to bleeding. Immune to bleeding being important because bleed goes through energy shield, so you can't just get one type by something. And chaos just means that you don't have to get any chaos res anymore. So anything that evolves life or chaos res on your gear is now useless. Then you want flat energy shield, which then gets multiplied by percentage energy shield. And the only way to get flat is from your gear. So your gear is everything on an energy shield build. You want to have as much energy shield as possible, which rolls in the prefix alongside spirit. So this is the hardest one. Get a ton of energy shield, at least like 650, while still retaining your spirit for your totems, and then other relevant stats if possible. Same thing goes for helmet. Your helmet is even more important because there's also a node on the tree that gives you increased energy shield from the helmet. So helmet is almost as important as the body armor, but you can see it's less value. And then gloves and boots are also quite important. Try to shoot for around 200, maybe 250 on the boots. Obviously, you're not going to cut movement speed, but everything else, you want to go for energy shield. Okay, so we got a lot of energy shield now, but we have to somehow multiply it because right now we would be sitting at like 2,500 or so, which is not much better. Well, the first step is on an amulet, you can get a lot. You can see I have 48% right here, which gets catalyzed with the defense modifier catalysts, and that goes for quite a bit. And then you also have jewels. Whereas on the life version, your jewels were only offensive. They can now also be defensive because you can roll up to 20% maximum energy shield. On top of that, you'll also notice that I have stuff like, where is it? Should be, yeah, here. Faster start of energy shield recharge. You should have at least 2 to 3 of these jewels to make it a little bit nicer. If you don't know, energy shield recharges after 4 seconds. This makes it a lot faster. All right, so now we have a gear sorted out, but what else is there? The passive tree is super, super important. There's a lot of percentage energy shield, and there's ancient Aegis here as well. You can see 12% for the small nodes. Up here, we get enhanced barrier. That's a lot of energy shield, and then all the jewels help together. There's also this new cluster, which also gives you faster start, and you get light radius, AoE. It's just a very nice cluster. And you want to make sure that you have good ailment and stun threshold, so you do go for hollowed. Now, if you would go higher level, I would start filling out, because I'm currently only level 97, you would just keep filling out these 15% energy shield nodes. And the last piece of the puzzle is the Darkness Enthroned belt. Now listen up. There's different versions of this belt. You need the one that says, this item gains bonuses from socketed items as though it was a body armor. So you can put in body armor stuff. Otherwise, this does not work. First, what it will do is they made it so this patch, it's pretty hard to get recharge rate. However, they left this one pretty much intact. It's not as good as it used to be, but it's still very good. So this one, everything that's socketed in here gets up to 100% increased effect. Now, you put this in, it's 30%. Now it's 59%. That is a lot of recharge rate, more than enough for what we need. Baseline is, I think, 12.5% per second. So now your energy shield will need like 5 seconds to go from 0 to 100. Okay. The second one is this, a pretty cool tech here. Rune of the Blossom. This is supposed to be just for leveling, right? You get a big bunch of spirit, and the higher you level, at some point you want to replace it because you also get minus per 2 levels. But what happens when you put this in a belt that does not have 100% is the -1 spirit per 2 levels rounds down to -1 and stays that way, but the plus to spirit goes up. So what you have is, even at level 100, you would still get 49 spirit. So this belt kind of keeps it all together. Now, should you have a Mage Blood or a Headhunter, all you want to do is put this Rune of Recovery right here in the body armor, as I have, and just forget about the spirit. You have to get the spirit elsewhere. Obviously, yeah, if you have Headhunter, Mage Blood, this belt becomes irrelevant, but until you have hundreds of divines, great belt. Speaking about hundreds of divines though, you will notice that I have some very expensive lineage gems here. The first one is Varana Siege. This one is decently affordable. All this really is you have magnified area in first, which gives you a lot of area. This one also does, but it gives you 20% more damage against isolated targets, which just means bosses, stuff that doesn't have any allies around it. But then let's talk about the big one, which is Rakiata's Flow. Now this gem is absolutely busted, and there's a reason why it costs 100 plus divines. Hits with supported skills treat enemy monster values as inverted. What does that mean? Let's say an enemy has 40% resistances. It now goes to -40, which in this example would come out to 133% more damage, which is, yeah. And it only goes higher and higher the higher the resistances goes on enemies. So complete no-brainer. However, it has bad synergy with Frost Bomb and Elemental Weakness because these reduce enemy resistances. So you plop down your Frost Bomb, you plop down your Elemental Weakness, and all of a sudden, the enemy is on -40 res, and then you bring it back to +40 res, which is, now you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So remove them both from your setup and make sure you have no other ways of reducing enemy resistances. In fact, you want them to have more, which is even more evident when you start mapping. So for example, Waystones can roll with percentage monster elemental resistances. Instead of being a huge downside, now this is actually a huge upside. Now you might ask, but why? Why would I waste a support gem if I could just get the same-ish with Frost Bomb and Elemental Weakness? Well, the answer is pretty simple. You're not always gonna have them up. If you think about how the game actually plays, you will see that while you're mapping, you can't always have these up because monsters come at you, they jump at you, and depending on how hard the content you do is, the harder it's going to get. And I'm assuming when you have 100 divines, you're already doing pretty hard content. So trust me on this. If you've never played with this gem before, you're going to absolutely love your build a ton more. And that is also because now you have 2 less buttons to press. And both Frost Bomb and Elemental Weakness are actually notorious for consuming a lot of mana. On the topic of mana though, you have mana problems, what to do? This is probably the biggest question I'm getting always. If it's early in the game, there's not that many tools. Press your mana flask as much as you possibly can. It is what it is. However, check your gems. Make sure that your spell totem is not higher than level 14. Now, If you don't have your 4th Ascendancy yet, that is not true because you don't have Unnamed Heartwood yet. You should be leveling it. Otherwise, your totems are going to get one shot everywhere and it's going to feel really bad. So at that point, ignore this and just go for level 20 as soon as possible. Later on, make sure you only have a level 14. Now, you will note that you have global levels. For example, I have +4. So you need to actually make it level 10 and then it goes to level 14 with those levels. So that's something you'll have to check on every single gear piece. And the same goes for Entangle. You want a level 1 and it's going to shoot up with global levels. You can't really do anything about it, but check that Entangle is level 1. Ellie Weakness, level 18, not higher. There's a breakpoint where it can affect all enemies. And after that, leveling it up is just a mana sponge. Same goes for Frost Bomb. Make sure you have efficiency supports everywhere. You can see this red gem right here. It is literally everywhere if I need it. Do note that in Endgame, if you feel safe, you can also remove this for a damage support on your spell totem, but everywhere else, it is mandatory. After that, we have efficient casting Instill. Like I said earlier in the progression, it's a very cheap instill and it gives you 20% mana cost efficiency. You also want a ton of maximum mana on gear. There's a difference whether you have 600 mana or you have 1100. It will increase your base regen and it will also give you more of a buffer. So if you see stuff like maximum mana here, maximum mana there, even though I'm not a mana stacker, that's why. Or it might even be a playstyle issue because you don't use your Mana Tempest correctly. So Mana Tempest drains your mana for everything that you cast after you've activated it. But you don't have to activate anything after if you don't want to because your totems just get it passively. So you don't have to put your totems in after. So for example, look what happens if I activate Mana Tempest first and then put down everything, right? I put down totems and all my stuff and you can see my mana is getting absolutely demolished right now. However, if I do all that before and then I press Mana Tempest, look what happens here. I do this, and now I press Mana Tempest. Nothing happens. Small tip for performance, because this build can be quite rough on your PC. If you scroll down over to dynamic culling, definitely tick this one. But yeah, that's about all I got for this video. Check out the max roll or the path of building, whatever you prefer. Yeah, in the doc, all the relevant links are right there. I absolutely love this Leaguestarter. I've played way too much over the last few days. I have to chill, just relax for a little bit. But I hope this video is going to be helpful. Like I said, everything down below in the description. Hope you guys have fun with this one as much as I did. And yeah, next project coming soon. See you guys around. With that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.